What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the No Fun League. Today, I'm joined by Ari Kozlau. Is that
Kozlov.
sorry about that.
All good.
Um, he runs the Fantasy Football Expert account on Instagram. Y'all should definitely go check him out. He also has a Patreon. Just extremely good content and fantasy football advice provided by him for the last 9 years. So, thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
So, the first question that I want to ask, because every every year when fantasy football season starts and it's about time to start drafting right around now, I go, okay, I'm gonna do like so much research this year, and then I'm just like, I don't know what to pay attention to from last season to figure out what to do. So like my first question is like, when you're running your account, when you're putting together your rankings, like what are the metrics, what are the things that you look at in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, it's kind of finding the balance between, what happened last season and what happened in the off season. Because obviously, you want to project forward, not backward so much, when you're looking at the upcoming season. So, I mean, it's kind of about finding the balance between, what happened last season, but also how those situations changed, over the off season from last year to this upcoming season. And then, if there were, flashes or something that, like, say younger players showed last year, and then, they're stepping into a bigger role, for example, the upcoming season, just kind of factors like that. So, I mean, in general, you don't want to get too stuck on what happened last season because every year is different, as we know, but you also don't want to completely ignore, what happened in years past, and especially when it comes to the scheme and coaches and tendencies of offensive coordinators and head coaches and all that. So there's not really like a straightforward answer to a question like that. Obviously, it's just kind of finding the balance between the history of a coach or a player as well as projecting forward to what could be different.
No, that makes that makes sense. And yeah, I it's really interesting because every year, I feel like Kyle Pitts is the biggest example right now in fantasy football where like every single year a lot of people are like, oh, he's definitely gonna be the guy this year, or like it'll be worth it this year. And the ADP keeps falling for him. So then it's really easy to talk yourself into it. And I would have picked him up as my second tight end, and I've only done one draft so far. I probably have like three more left to do. I would have taken him in that draft because I got McBride in the fourth round, and then I needed a backup, so I was going to take him. He got picked before I could do it. But in that scenario, like, do you think players that like for 3 4 years under different systems have like never had success or like haven't been as good as they were thought to be? Do you think there's like salvage? Do you think there's salvation there, or is this kind of just like you have to like see it before you invest it?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a case by case, basis in terms of, who the player is. You're saying Kyle Pitts, right? Just now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with him, it was a combination, at least in my mind, of both scheme coaching as well as quarterback play, and at least on paper, they're both better heading into the season in terms of both coaching and quarterback. I mean, for me personally, it's either Engram or Ferguson in that kind of similar range, or I'm just kind of punting the position. And two guys I've been talking about, super late that I'm targeting if I'm punting the position is Noah Fant and then Ben Tanat. I'm looking to pair, a rookie and Tanat, with the older. I mean, not that Fant's old, but like an older player than the rookie. And not to say that Sanat's going to be as good, but Sam Laporta was the guy I was targeting in the double digit rounds, like every league last year. It's not as good of a situation for Sanat, but I think in terms of a pure talent player, I think he's comparable. So and now we had the trade today of Jahan Dodson going to the Eagles. So I mean, there's really no clear number two target. Behind McLaurin in that Washington offense. I guess the only kind of roadblock for Sanat would be Zach Ertz, who is in Washington, and but I think Sanat he's not someone you're probably going to be able to rely on right away, which is why I like pairing him with Fant. But I think by the second half of the season, I think Sanat can easily take over that lead tight end role. And again, in offense where, after McLaurin, there's really a wide open kind of range of, who could be that next target for Jaden Daniels. So that's kind of my long-winded answer, but for Kyle Pitts, going back to Pitts, I mean, in a vacuum, I think, this is by far the best situation he's been in his career. But I mean, he's still gonna have to fall for me to consider him more like, I guess, like 12-team leagues, like seventh, eighth round range would be like kind of
Hmm.
where I consider him, which is, I guess, kind of where he's going, in general. So I'm not totally opposed to taking a stab on him personally. There's other players, running back, watcher that I like more, that to where I'd rather just punt the position at that point. And just, like I said, pair Fant and not late together. You can usually get them both in the last 2, 3 rounds, or
Hmm.
2, 3, 4 rounds.
Yeah, no, for sure. I love Benson out this year. I haven't been able to get him in any of my leagues so far, but I really hope that I can get him in at least one league because I think that would be fun. Okay, our next question. Speaking of the draft, we've already gotten into a little bit of strategy. There's a lot of different ones. There's the no running back one. Then, there's obviously you go running back, receiver, running back, receiver. Out of all of them, which one do you think is the most effective when you get to the draft?
Yeah, I mean, my stance is always best player available. So just taking it how the draft, because every draft's going to be different, especially when you're drafting in a home league offline with friends, where it can go off the rails sometimes compared to online drafts where you have the preset rankings in front of you. So I mean, it's always best player available for me, and that can lead you different ways, whether it's zero running back, hero running back, uh, zero wide receiver in some cases. When to draft the quarterback and tight end. It all depends on how your draft goes, who falls where. Like I could, I just think pigeonholing yourself. That's what I always call it, into like a set strategy before you draft and before you know who will be available at each pick. I think can just lead you kind of astray to where you could take advantage of the value of a player, say, who's going in the third round and falls, say late fourth, for example,
Hmm.
something like that. So I mean, to me, the best approach is simply just going in open-minded. I mean, obviously, it's fine to have kind of a general strategy and a general players that you want to target in like a certain range. And I mean, obviously, in general, like the first couple rounds, for the most part, you know how it's going to go. So I think the first round, first 2 rounds is fine to have a strategy because generally who's going to be available. But in general, I think best player available and just kind of taking how the draft goes and uh, looking at how other people are drafting around you and all that is kind of the way to go.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and I see this happen every year. Is like I go and I'm like, okay, this year I'm definitely doing this. Like this is my strategy, and then it'll probably like sometimes not even like getting out of round one where I'm like, oh yeah, no, that's dead. We're just going with my gut feeling now. And then obviously there's like certain guys that you want going into the draft and you try to get them, but then it is what it is. I, my next question is in this fantasy football season, 2024, because people are hopefully going to watch this before they go do their drafts. Who do you think is like, who are some of the most overrated guys in fantasy this year, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the one guy that comes to mind first is the guy that I put a post on earlier this week, and that's James Cook. I think he's a super talented player, obviously, and he's super elusive and shifty, and he's all of that. But I just think situation is what means more than the player's talent when it comes to fantasy football. And last year they brought in a 34-year-old Latavius Murray to take over the goal line role over him. I mean, Cook, his first 2 seasons, he's had 2 rushing touchdowns both seasons. I just don't think there's enough upside in him to warrant where he's being drafted, kind of in that third round range. There's just a lot of receivers I like more. DK Metcalf, Cooper Kupp are two guys that come to mind as receivers that see more upside. I mean, even someone like Kenneth Walker, who I think can step more into a 3-down role this year, based on what we're kind of hearing at Seahawks camp. I see more upside in him. So, and then they drafted Ray Davis, who is a bigger back as well. He's also caught over 60 passes in his last 2 years in college. Um, at Kentucky and Vanderbilt. So he's capable in the passing game. He's a bigger back who could take the goal line. And obviously, you still have Josh Allen, who will have a role in the goal line as well as a rusher, obviously. So that's kind of the person that comes to mind the most. I mean, I'm always someone who says no one should be completely undraftable. Like if every player they have a certain price, or if they fall, far enough, um, then you can draft them. But James Cook for me, it's like it's not even remotely realistic for me because I value him like late fourth, kind of in that range, and he's never gonna fall that far. So
Yeah,
he's probably the player to me that most stands out for that. I don't want to
that's
be overrated, but just a player I'm not gonna draft.
yeah. So I had James Cook last year. I have him again this year. Last year it was frustrating to me because the games where he got the ball, the Bills' offense did phenomenal. And then there'd be games, and that's why Ken Dorsey got fired, where like he wouldn't touch the ball at all. They also for long stretches of time would put in, like you said, 34-year-old Latavius Murray, and I think they had someone else as well that was used to get playing time. But he rarely got like he didn't really get a lot of snaps. He wasn't the bell cow at all, which like we saw in the Dallas game where like if you did treat him as the bell cow, he would do really well. So that's what was frustrating last year, and obviously goal line. But I don't know. For him personally, I fully agree with what you said, and I think I got good value on him in the draft that I got him in because I believe it was round 5. But I just think that he in the Joe Brady offense would do well running if they actually used him. And the
Yeah,
other thing,
I know that's the argument some people have is that he was better when Brady took over the play calling duties, and I get that, and I think he can show flashes of that again this season, but I think it's just the way. I mean, first of all, them bringing in Davis, who's obviously way younger than Latavius Murray. Obviously, he's a rookie, and I think he has all the capabilities that James Cook has. And then there's also another point I didn't mention is the ball security. Was I think he was tied for second last year among running backs with 4 fumbles. So I think right away Ray Davis will have a role, and if the ball security issues has any shows up again, let's just say early in the season for Cook, that could only lead to a closer to like I think it's going to open something like a 70-30. Like Cook will be the lead back to open the season. I just think there's more value in Ray Davis in the double-digit rounds than there is Cook. I mean, yeah, 5th round where you got him, I think that's perfectly fine to take a chance on him. But where he's going right now in most fantasy leagues in like the early to mid 3rd round, I think there's not enough value or upside to warrant him going that early.
no, for sure. Yeah, no, ball security was a massive, massive issue, especially when you have a defensive head coach, because you're getting benched right away when that happens. And then opposite question, is there anybody that you think is like massively underrated going into this season?
Yeah, I mean the 2 running backs that I'm like targeting that I've been talking about again on my account all off season, James Conner and David Montgomery, who are both like to me they're like as safe an RB2 as you can get, and they're going like 6th, 7th round range in 12-team leagues. I feel like Conner is creeping up a little bit more towards like the 5th round, but I mean even in the 5th round, like I'm perfectly fine drafting him. I mean Conner, he's still the workhorse in an offense that's going to be, really good. I think this season with the Cardinals with Kyler Murray healthy, and the Cardinals, they're going to be playing from behind in a lot of games, but Conner has that role in the passing game, so he's going to be on the field no matter the game script. So to get, a true workhorse, like I don't think, like Trey Benson, they drafted him. I think he's not going to, as long as Conner's healthy, which is, of course, is a slight concern, but I mean, that risk to me is baked into where he's being drafted in, the 5th, 6th round. And then David Montgomery, I'm huge on Gibbs. He's a 1st round pick for me, but to me, they complement each other to where they can both, work together. And Montgomery still has, 10 plus touchdown upside. So they get a player like that, has close to 1,000 yards and, 10 touchdown upside. And the 6th round range to me is about as maybe not like a steal. Maybe that's not the right word, but just about as safe of pick as you can get. Like if you're in a spot where you go wide receiver heavy early and you're waiting for RB2, Connor Montgomery are my two targets in every draft in the 5th, 6th round. And then I guess just one more, Zach Moss, who I like a lot as well. And he's going, later in like the 7th, like the early 7th, as late as like the 9th round, and 12 team leagues again is what I'm kind of basing everything off of. Um, Joe Mixon led the league last year in carries inside the 10-yard line, and that's the role that Moss is stepping into. I know Chase Brown is, the shiny toy that everybody like. He's obviously more exciting. He's faster. He'll have his role in the passing game. But to me, the early down goal line role in this Bengals offense, I think, will bounce back with Joe Burrow healthy, and they'll be in the red zone plenty. And they're, again, not afraid to run the ball inside the 10-yard line, like we saw last year with Mixon and Moss. I think it was weeks 2 through 5 last year when Taylor was hurt. He was like a top 5 running back.
Oh,
So
yeah. I
uh,
think that's a guy that I've wanted. I don't think I've gotten him in either league, but I've wanted him badly in both leagues. And I think it's I don't know. He's definitely undervalued because even like I was looking at Fantasy Pros and ESPN, like I'm reading the things that they're saying about him in their little blurb. It's like, oh, but like Chase Brown is gonna get like all the pass catches and everything. I'm like, he did pretty good last year with Gardner Minshew in the
yeah,
Colts offense. I feel like he can do well with Joe Burrow. And
yeah. I
then
mean, I was just gonna say, I don't see like top 5 upside in Moss like he did last year, just because
yeah,
Chase Brown will take more than what anybody took behind Moss last year at the Colts. But I think he's still, like, to me, he's a low in RB2, high in RB3 that you can draft as sometimes your RB4 as late as he's
yeah,
shown.
no, for sure. And then another guy that I wanted to ask about because I picked him up yesterday after seeing some highlights on Twitter. Jordan Whittington from the Rams. What are
Yeah,
your
I know he flashed in the preseason. I think it was last week or the week before. Um, and McVay had, comments about him about how well he's looked and all that. I still don't think that I think he's more, maybe a dynasty stash and like I don't see him really having any value this year. I mean, I think it's what I think. I mean, obviously you have Calvin Puka, and I think Demarcus Robinson, I believe, is their wide receiver 3, who's pretty much set in stone. So, I mean, I know he's flashed in the preseason, but I don't really see any redraft appeal in him this year.
mm-hmm. No, for sure. It's just, I think especially with the Rams, I feel like everybody's looking for the next Puka. But
Yeah,
especially with the Rams, it's like, oh look, another late round pick that they got.
yeah.
You brought up Jahan Dotson earlier. Do you think that that has any real impact on either the Eagles or the Commanders this season?
I mean, not on the Eagles. It was kind of a weird trade, obviously. Like there are rumors of him being traded, but we don't really see it. Not usually an in division trade, like that. So I mean, Dodson will just be. I think he'll just be a depth receiver. I don't see him having any impact on AJ Brown or Devontae Smith or Saquon Barkley. I mean, I guess the only maybe argument is maybe Dallas Goedert. Maybe he takes some targets away from him. But nobody, none of the top guys, Brown, Smith, and Barkley. The Commanders. I mean, again, like I talked about with Sanat earlier, it could help him a little bit. Um, I mean, Dan Quinn said that there is no clear wide receiver 2. They're still in the search for that. So, um, based on what we've seen in the preseason, it seems like De'Ami Brown has, interesting or has started to gain a rapport with Jayden Daniels. So that to me, it's either De'Ami Brown or Ben Sinnott who gains the most value on Washington. I don't think McLaurin. He was already the clear cut number 1, so to me it doesn't really affect him that much. I mean, I already
Mm-hmm.
like him, so it
Yeah.
does move him in any way. But it's probably either De'Ami Brown or Ben Sinnott. I'm hoping Ben Sinnott because that's the guy I'm targeting, in every league this season. But like I said, the only way it might be Brown over Sinnott is if Zach Ertz, gets in the way of Sinnott, at least early in the season. I think, again, I think
Mm-hmm.
Sinnott, as the year goes on, will emerge. But I think De'Ami Brown would be the receiver, at least, who benefits the most.
Oh, for sure. I also saw some people have this take where maybe the Commanders are back in the race for Ayuk, and that's why they decided to trade him to a division rival, which would make sense given the Jaden Daniels connection and the Adam Peters connection. At the same time, the entire Ayuk saga has been like it's getting old. I've been waiting for it to get done for the last 2 weeks. But another interesting question with JJ McCarthy getting hurt and being out for the year, which sucks because I genuinely thought that he had an outside shot at Rookie of the Year for this season. But do you think Justin Jefferson's value will be fine with Sam Darnold at quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, the reports were that it was going to be Sam Darnold week 1, so to me, it doesn't change, that much. I mean, obviously, there's a chance McCarthy could have took over, midway into the season if the Vikings are a team just in general that I'm just kind of off of in general this season. Um, so I mean, Jefferson is my wide receiver 5 right now. I still think he's gonna be, like he's proven to be quarterback proof. Let's just say so. Generally, he'll be fine, but it does limit his upside. I mean, for me, he's like a late first round pick, which is a little bit later than some people. Like some people still have him as a top 5, 6 pick. So I would say a little bit lower on him than most others that I've seen at least. I mean, I haven't really seen anybody value him as like a second round pick, at least from what I've seen. But so he's my number 5 wide receiver right now, number 9 overall player. But I mean, I have like Barkley and Kyron right behind him in my overall rankings. I'm perfectly fine going, Barkley or Kyron over him if that's the route you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I think his upside's going to be limited, I think, but he's still going to be a target hog, and he's still overall going to be mostly fine.
If he's your wide receiver 5, who are the 4 people ahead of him?
Yeah, so it's right now. I don't know. So I had Lamb number 1 and Hill number 2. I swapped them for now just because of the Lamb situation. I still think he's gonna get his deal eventually. I'd be surprised if the holdout goes into the season, but just I mean it's already close for me between Lamb and Hill. So just because it was already that close, I swapped them for now. So Hill 1,
Mm-hmm.
Lamb 2, and then I guess it's the same thing with Chase, who's also kind of holding. He's holding in technically because he's still at training camp, but he's not practicing. So I have him 3 and Amon-Ra at 4. But that's another situation where I could be fine switching Amon-Ra at 3 and Chase 4.
Mm-hmm.
But as of like right this second, it's Hill, Lamb, Chase, Amon-Ra, Jefferson.
Okay. I on the Justin Jefferson thing. Now this is very optimistic. This is about to be like a freezing cold take situation potentially in a few months. I think Sam Darnold is going to get a $30 million contract next season from some team. Obviously not the Vikings because they have JJ, but I think some team is going to give him something in the 20 to 30 range next season because the Vikings offensive line is pretty decent. It's not like the Lions or Eagles, but it's not the Giants either. And then you have really good skill position players on that team. And you have the guy that made Josh Dobbs look like a top 5 NFL quarterback on 2 days' notice, getting Sam Darnold for an entire offseason to coach him up because like the arm talent with him has always been there. He just has never been in a good situation as a quarterback in the NFL. So obviously it's asking for a lot for someone like year 6, year 7 at this point to turn it around. But I think this is Geno Smith was able to do it after spending 10 years as a backup. So I think Sam Darnold has a shot, in my opinion, to be a really good quarterback, especially with the talent that they have. So I'm still like, if I had the number 2 pick, I would have picked Justin over Tyreek. Or actually, no, I wouldn't say that because, like you said, CeeDee Lamb, Ramon-Ra, a couple of Jamar Chase. But I would still like if I was in that position, I would still pick him top 5 for the sole purpose that I think like talent wise, I think he's the best receiver in the NFL by a long shot. The scheme is obviously great for him. He just got paid. But I also just think that Darnold is going to have a decent season.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I guess I've seen kind of 50-50 in terms of both sides of the table. So
Hmm.
yeah, we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, no, I think that team is going to be really fun to watch either way. Think like we don't have League Pass in the NFL, but like if League Pass existed, that would be a fun League Pass team. But really quickly before we end it, a couple of quick questions. How many fantasy leagues do you do a year?
Yeah, it's often not the exact same every year, but it's usually between 8 to 11. I mean, it adds up quickly because I'm in, 2 to 3 leagues with friends. And then I'm in probably. I usually run one or two, community leagues with my community, and then I'm in a couple leagues with other, accounts. So it just kind of adds
Hmm.
up quickly.
Yeah, no, that's insane. I remember one time I tried doing like six,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
it gets old very quickly. And then which fantasy football app, like which app is the best to host your league?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up on ESPN, so that's I always just I know Sleeper app is the one that people love, and I have nothing against it. Um, and ESPN's definitely gotten worse by a lot over the last like decade or so when I started playing. Um, I still like ESPN even with it getting worse in some ways, but obviously it's a personal preference question. I mean, I've played on Yahoo and NFL before. Definitely not my preference on either of those platforms personally, but and it's also interesting because every platform has a different setup pre-draft rankings. So when you're drafting online, you could have a player go like 2, 3 rounds of different because of just their
Hmm.
pre-ranking. So
Oh,
that's
for sure, for
yeah,
sure.
but
I think it's funny that like at least like in the leagues that like I get set and stuff like that, like I'm sure overall a lot of people use it. But like the NFL fantasy experience is like one of the worst ones comparatively to the others, which is really interesting considering that like, it's their own app. Like they
yeah,
can make it probably they have the resources to make it the best app possible.
yeah,
So that's really interesting to me. But I also think that if they wanted to, because I think like just like the regular NFL app is awful as well. But if they wanted to, with like next gen stats and stuff being on NFL Plus now and stuff like that, they can make fantasy really cool. And I don't know if you saw, but like with Sunday Ticket, you can now like just like put your Yahoo or NFL roster in there, which is
yeah.
pretty cool.
YouTube
I
TV, yeah,
hopefully they do that for ESPN as well.
yeah, yeah,
But now that's always been interesting to me that ESPN or that the NFL fantasy app like is not as fun as the other ones. I used Sleeper for the first time this year because I did a dynasty draft in May because Matt Miller from ESPN was doing it with his followers. I was like, why not? This sounds fun. And everybody got like 8 hours to pick. So it started on a Thursday morning and the draft got over 2 weeks later on a Thursday. So it
mm,
literally took 2 weeks, but the entire sleeper experience was really fun. Like I really enjoyed using the app and it looks fun. I'm excited to see it as the season goes on. But really quickly, I wanted to run you through my fantasy roster for my ESPN league. Standard PPR scoring. I had the 10th overall pick in a 10-man league. Just want to get your thoughts on it. So the starting lineup is Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, James Cook, AJ Brown, DJ Moore, Trey McBride, Chris Godwin in the flex right now. Got the Bears defense in McPherson. And then on the bench, we got Javonte Williams, uh, Christian Watson, Devin Singletary, Brian Thomas, Caleb Williams, Adonai Mitchell, Chega Okonkwo, Jordan Whittington, and Tyrone Tracy Jr.
yeah. I mean, I think obviously 10 team leagues are like you wouldn't think a 10 versus 12 is that much of a difference, but it kind of is a pretty big difference in terms of just kind of how shallow at least it feels like at least at the end of the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, like I said, I'm not like huge on Cook this year, but fifth round where you got him, I think it's fine taking a chance on him on there. Um, I personally don't really value AJ Brown quite that early at 10 at the 10-11 turn. I think he's a fine pick. There's just other guys that I like. For me, he's probably like a like a 14 and 16 overall. So like a few picks later, it's not like a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
I like McBride. I like Godwin. DJ Moore, I don't mind, but I feel like a little bit lower on him just in that, like I think he is number one, but I also think that, I think Rome could surprise some people this year. To me, I think sooner rather than later, he's going to emerge as number two in the offense ahead
Mm-hmm.
of Keenan Allen, I believe. So I might have gone a different receiver there, but I still think Moore as wide receiver two. I value him as wide receiver two still.
Mm-hmm.
Can you read the bench again?
I got you, bud. We got Javonte Williams, Christian Watson, Devin Singletary, Brian Thomas Jr., Caleb Williams, A.D. Mitchell, Chigagonklo, Jordan Whittington, and Tyrone Tracy Jr.
Yeah, I mean, I like Watson, Singletary, as like depth on your bench. I know we've seen flashes a lot of Brian Thomas. A lot of people are, like him a lot. Honestly, I don't mind him as probably your wide for like five or whatever he is. Um, uh, you know, I like Caleb Williams. Obviously, as a back, I think he can easily be, a starting caliber. I'd probably rather just take another flyer on a running back or receiver over a Okonkwo. Like I don't think you really need a backup behind McBride, really. Um,
So
yeah.
I didn't draft Okonkwo. I had him. Oh, I didn't have a. So like ESPN sent me my draft grades, and I'm looking at it, and the only position that I like, they're like, oh, it's bad, is like tight end, and I'm like, I have Trey McBride, and then it goes, nope, you don't have a backup tight end. So I was like, oh no, and then just because I like having at least two at each position, I forget. I think it was Gabe Davis. I just dropped Gabe Davis to get uh Chigagonkwo just to have a backup tight end in case
Yeah,
something stupid happens.
I'm fine dropping Gabe Davis, but I'd rather like a running back that's like a backup, with a clear path to a starting if the starter was to miss time.
Yeah.
I have no idea who's available, obviously, but someone like a Bucky Irving or Braylon Allen, I don't know, they could both be rostered, but um, so someone like that where it's backup where they're like one injury away or one
Hmm.
missing time away. Like I'd rather such player like that over a Conquo who you're never going to start besides the 1 week, and that 1 week you
Yeah.
can go to the waiver wire for that 1 week, obviously. So.
Oh, for sure, for sure, for sure. No, that's.
Also, I would pay zero attention to draft grades given to you, like the automated,
Oh
yeah.
no, it's awesome because every year, like the projected standings or whatever that like ESPN puts out for your league, every year I'm like usually like seventh, eighth without fail, and then every year I end up like having a good season. And
Yeah.
then for AJ Brown, so you know how we talked about like not going into the draft with a strategy or like wanting to do something specific. Yeah, this season I really wanted to stack, and I wanted to do it with the Colts with Pittman, Jonathan Taylor, and Anthony Richardson because I really wanted Anthony Richardson. But Jonathan Taylor went at 9. So then I'm at 10 as a Giants fan with Saquon Barkley and AJ Brown as the top two guys on the board. And I'm just like, you know what? Let's just bite the bullet. It's fine. They're gonna be good anyways. At least like there's a little bit of satisfaction. So that's what ended up happening there. I think that I think with AJ Brown, like at least from what I've seen, I haven't had him in fantasy since like the early Tennessee days. But like he's just always like he's been like like he seems like a consistent option, like numbers wise and like production wise. So I was like, it can't be the worst thing in the world to have him on the team.
No, yeah. I mean, he'll be fine. It's just there are some weeks where Devontae Smith out targeted him last year. So that is a bit of a concern for me. I'd rather have Devontae Smith in the fourth, fifth than AJ Brown at that term. But I mean, by the end of the season, Brown will have fine numbers and he'll still be fine.
I am never drafting Devontae Smith again after last year because every week I needed him to do something, AJ Brown would get 40 targets and he would get 5. I was like,
I mean,
happen,
but yeah.
There was 1 week where I literally all I needed from him was like 2 catches, and he didn't get it. And I was like, you're getting benched for the rest of the year. But no, fantasy's fun until some bullshit happens and you lose. I don't know if you remember. Remember when Tyreek Hill on like a Sunday or Monday night game, like he caught the ball but didn't realize he caught it?
Mhm.
Yeah, that basically screwed me out of the fantasy championship. Because
Yeah,
if
that's
he caught
brutal.
that, we're going through. But it is what it is. Hey, thank you for hopping on. Hopefully we can do
Absolutely.
this again at some point during the season.
Yeah, for
And yeah,
sure.
everybody go check out Fantasy Football Expert on Instagram and check out his Patreon as well. Thank you. Thank you guys for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Peace.